Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, let us step quietly into a time when medicine tasted like mystery and the line between healing and harm was still being drawn. A time when America's pharmacies glowed like small theaters of wonder, filled with glass jars, golden liquids, and promises that sparkled as brightly as the bubbles in your glass. It was the late 19th century, an age of invention, ambition, and profound uncertainty. Electric lights were flickering to life in city streets. Steam engines carried goods and dreams across a growing nation. But medicine was still a strange frontier, half science and half superstition. If you felt tired, anxious, or weak, you did not visit a doctor the way we do now. You went to the local apothecary, where the pharmacist might prescribe a tonic brewed right in front of you. These tonics were sold under names like Elixir of Life, Nerve Restorer, or Gentleman's Reviver. Their labels promised to cure headaches, digestion, sleeplessness, and melancholy. They claimed to strengthen the heart, lift the spirit, and calm the mind. And yet, inside many of these bottles was a cocktail of powerful ingredients: cocaine, opium, chloroform, and strong alcohol, all legal, all proudly advertised. There were no warning labels. There were no ingredient lists as we know them today. And there was certainly no government agency checking what went into the drinks that lined the pharmacy shelves. Medicine in those days was an act of faith. If the tonic made you feel good, you bought another. If it did not, you simply tried a new one. The atmosphere inside those old pharmacies was something between a science lab and a church. You could smell mint, lemon peel, and alcohol in the air. The sound of glass against metal mixed with the hiss of carbonation from early soda fountains. Customers sat on tall stools at the counter, chatting, reading newspapers, or waiting to be served their daily dose of health. In that world, the pharmacist was not only a professional, he was a performer. He might wear a crisp white coat and mix your tonic with a flourish, pouring colored liquids from one glass to another before topping it with sparkling soda water. He was both chemist and showman, healer and salesman. And in the golden age of tonics, one particular creation would rise from this world to conquer the planet. But before Coca-Cola became a brand, before it became the red and white logo on billboards and Christmas trucks, it began here in this strange, hopeful era when science and magic were still the same language. Let us pause for a moment and picture that time. There were no smartphones, no televisions, and no refrigerators filled with cans of soda. There was only the curiosity of the human mind and a deep desire to feel better, think faster, and live longer. People believed that somewhere, perhaps in the right mixture of roots and extracts, there lay a shortcut to vitality. Coca leaves, imported from South America, were already famous in Europe. Travelers returning from Peru wrote glowing reports of how the locals chewed the leaves to fight fatigue at high altitudes. They said it sharpened focus, eased hunger, and filled the body with energy. Doctors began to experiment with coca extracts in liquid form, combining them with other natural stimulants, like kola nut, a seed from West Africa, known for its caffeine. This was the age of chemistry without caution. The word drug did not yet carry fear. It carried fascination. Every new discovery felt like a gift from modern science. And so tonics with these exotic ingredients became symbols of progress, of the new century's promise. Pharmacies were booming. A new kind of social life was forming around the soda fountain, the polished marble counter where fizzy drinks were served as refreshments and as remedies. Young people gathered there the way they gather in coffee shops today. They shared gossip, flirted, or simply enjoyed a dose of sweetness in a glass. It was safe, respectable, and in many towns it replaced the local tavern. The temperance movement, which campaigned against alcohol, praised these drinks as moral alternatives to the bottle. "Why poison yourself with whiskey?" one newspaper ad asked, "when you can restore your health with a sparkling nerve tonic?" And so, across America, soda fountains became the new moral playgrounds, places where you could enjoy pleasure without guilt. Into this atmosphere stepped a man named John Stith Pemberton, a pharmacist from Georgia. He had survived the Civil War, but not without scars both visible and invisible. A sword wound had left him in constant pain, and to numb it, he had turned to morphine, a legal and widely available medicine at the time. But the drug that healed him soon became the chain that held him. Like many veterans of his generation, Pemberton searched for a gentler escape, something that could ease pain without feeding addiction. In his laboratory, surrounded by bottles and fumes, he began experimenting. He mixed, tasted, and adjusted formulas late into the night. The neighbors said they could see the lamp in his workshop glowing long after midnight. What he sought was not just relief, it was redemption. He wanted to prove that science could heal, that chemistry could uplift instead of enslave. And somewhere amid those trials, among coca leaves, cola nuts, and fragrant oils, he stumbled upon a mixture that would soon change the world. A drink dark as mahogany, sweet as syrup, and alive with bubbles that danced against the glass. It would be poured, at first, for just a handful of customers at a local pharmacy counter. No one there could have guessed that they were witnessing the birth of an empire. But to understand why this new tonic fascinated people, we have to understand the world it entered. This was an America hungry for optimism. Cities were growing, railroads were stretching, and electricity was beginning to light homes and hearts. At the same time, exhaustion, stress, and uncertainty haunted people's daily lives. Farmers moved to cities, workers faced long factory hours, and everyone was searching for a miracle in a bottle, something to restore energy, focus, and faith. Coca-Cola did not appear in a vacuum. It arrived exactly when people were ready to believe in it. It was the perfect child of its century, a century that worshipped progress and ignored the price. And for a few dazzling years, that price would be paid in secret, one glass at a time, because inside that dark, delicious drink, hidden beneath sugar and fizz, was a secret ingredient that made people feel good, perhaps a little too good. An ingredient that came from the mountains of South America, carried halfway across the world, and transformed into the most famous drink on earth. That secret, that spark, is where our story truly begins. So tonight, as we lift the curtain on the origins of Coca-Cola, remember this: every invention, no matter how ordinary it seems, carries within it the dreams and the dangers of its time. And sometimes, what begins as medicine becomes something much larger than anyone ever intended. John Stith Pemberton was not the kind of man history usually remembers as a dreamer. He was a pharmacist by trade, a soldier by past, and a survivor by necessity. Born in rural Georgia in 1831, he grew up in a world of dust roads, cotton fields, and rigid discipline. He studied chemistry because it offered logic in a world of chaos formulas that behaved predictably, unlike people or war. Then came the Civil War. When the gunfire stopped and the flags fell silent, men like Pemberton returned home, carrying invisible wounds. He had been slashed by a saber near Columbus, Georgia, a wound that never fully healed. Doctors, armed with little more than morphine and sympathy, prescribed the same cure for every kind of pain, and so began a cycle that claimed thousands of veterans. Healing through addiction. Morphine offered him sleep, but it stole everything else. It dulled his mind, blurred his ambitions, and turned his laboratory into a cage. He was brilliant enough to see the trap, and desperate enough to try to escape it. That desperation became his compass. He wanted to replace the opiates that ruled him with something that could awaken the body rather than silence it. Something that could energize, uplift, and heal, at least in spirit, if not in fact. So he began to experiment not as a businessman, but as a man searching for redemption through chemistry. His laboratory was a small wooden room behind his pharmacy, filled with glass bottles labeled in elegant cursive: caffeine, coca extract, citric acid, lime oil, vanilla, nutmeg. The air smelled of citrus peel and burning alcohol. Metal instruments clinked softly as he worked late into the night. Neighbors said they saw his lamp burning until dawn, the faint silhouette of a man stirring something in the glow of science and hope. Among his ingredients was one that fascinated him most: the coca leaf. It came from far away, the mountains of Peru and Bolivia, carried across oceans in wooden crates. For centuries, indigenous Andean people had chewed coca leaves to fight hunger and fatigue at high altitudes. When European chemists extracted its active compound cocaine, they hailed it as a modern miracle. By the 1880s, cocaine appeared in toothache drops, throat sprays, and energy tonics. It was legal, admired, and considered a gift from nature. To balance the coca's sharp stimulation, Pemberton added kola nut, a seed from West Africa, rich in caffeine and bitter oils. The kola nut gave the mixture a deeper flavor, earthy and aromatic, and a second source of energy. He sweetened it with sugar to soften the bite, and added traces of lime and cinnamon to make it pleasant to the tongue. The result was a thick, dark syrup that shimmered in the lamplight. One evening, while testing his new creation, Pemberton accidentally mixed it with carbonated water, which was being sold at the time as a health aid for digestion. The reaction surprised him. The syrup fizzed, sparkled, and came alive. He tasted it cool, effervescent, with a tingle that raced up the spine and left the lips slightly numb. It was unlike anything he had made before. He shared it the next day at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, offering samples for 5 cents a glass. The customers who sipped it that afternoon felt something they could not quite describe: refreshed, alert, maybe even happy. The bubbles danced on their tongues, the sweetness lingered, and within minutes they asked for another. One of them reportedly said, "It lifts the fog from my mind." Another joked, "Feels like a day's rest in one drink." Pemberton took note of every reaction. He adjusted the formula, balancing the sweetness with acidity, adjusting the proportion of syrup to soda, refining until it felt just right. He was not selling a beverage. He was selling a sensation, something that replaced fatigue with clarity and despair with comfort. By the end of that first week, Jacob's Pharmacy was selling several glasses a day. A small success, but enough to give the pharmacist hope. He scribbled the name Coca-Cola in his notebook: coca for the coca leaf, cola for the kola nut. His bookkeeper, Frank M. Robinson, suggested writing the name in elegant Spencerian script, looping and fluid, designed to be remembered. That handwriting would later become one of the most recognized logos on Earth. At this stage, Coca-Cola was not yet a soft drink. It was marketed as a nerve tonic, an intellectual beverage meant to sharpen focus, ease headaches, and lift the spirit. Advertisements described it as the temperance drink, a moral alternative to alcohol. Each glass promised a gentle, legal, chemical cheer. It fit perfectly into the culture of the time, respectable indulgence. Behind the scenes, Pemberton's health was failing. Years of morphine use had weakened his body. He was still trapped between pain and relief, between his ideals and his dependence. He poured his last strength into perfecting the formula, perhaps hoping that success could heal what medicine could not. The early Coca-Cola contained an estimated 9 milligrams of cocaine per serving, far less than modern drug use, but enough to cause mild euphoria and alertness. At that time, no one saw this as dangerous. It was praised for its invigorating effects on the brain and body. Newspapers and pharmacists alike celebrated the drink as a modern miracle of chemistry, a bridge between medicine and pleasure. Pemberton himself may not have realized the irony. In trying to free himself from one addiction, he had created another kind of habit, not chemical at first, but cultural. A drink that people did not just want, but began to need. His little experiment, born out of pain and curiosity, started to travel beyond Atlanta. Other pharmacists copied his recipe. Bottlers began asking for rights to reproduce it. And though his health was declining, his creation had found life beyond him. Within a year, he was selling small shares of the formula to investors, unsure if he would live to see it grow. In the summer of 1888, John Pemberton passed away at age 57. He died quietly, almost forgotten, still struggling with illness and debt. He never saw the empire that rose from his humble invention. He left behind a widow, a formula, and a few handwritten notes that would later become the foundation of one of the world's most valuable brands. In a poetic way, Pemberton's story mirrors the drink itself, a blend of light and shadow, hope and harm. This quest to heal himself gave birth to something that healed and harmed others in different ways. And yet, it is hard not to feel sympathy for him, a man of science who chased redemption through chemistry, and who, in doing so, bottled the spirit of an entire age. So when we talk about Coca-Cola, we are not just talking about a drink. We are talking about a man's longing to overcome pain, to turn suffering into invention, and to leave behind something that would outlive his own struggles. And in that transformation from morphine to caffeine, from despair to discovery, lies the real beginning of the Coca-Cola story. Because every empire starts with one idea, and Pemberton's idea, born from pain and poured into a glass, would soon reshape the world's thirst forever. The year was 1886, and Atlanta was buzzing with optimism. The city had risen from the ashes of the Civil War, and everywhere there was a sense of renewal. Railroads, cotton mills, and new industries were turning a wounded city into a modern one. Amid this transformation, Coca-Cola quietly began its own journey, from a pharmacist's counter to the collective heartbeat of a nation. At first, it was just a curiosity. A few regular customers at Jacob's Pharmacy told their friends about the strange new brain tonic that seemed to chase away headaches and exhaustion. The drink was cold, sweet, and bubbly. Something new in a world still used to bitter medicine and lukewarm remedies. Within weeks, people were dropping by the pharmacy not because they were sick, but because they wanted another glass. Word of mouth did what no advertisement could. Men ordered it after long days of work. Women tasted it during shopping trips. Students came in after class, intrigued by the promise of refreshment and vigor. Soon, the marble counter at Jacob's became a social hub, a place where laughter mixed with the hiss of soda fountains and the clink of glasses. In those early years, Coca-Cola was more than a beverage. It was a cultural experiment. Pemberton's bookkeeper and partner, Frank Mason Robinson, saw the potential long before anyone else did. He believed the drink could reach far beyond Atlanta if only it had a story worth telling. And so he gave it one. He designed the name Coca-Cola in bold, elegant script, 2 words that danced together like a signature, hinting at something both exotic and familiar. He added the tagline, delicious, refreshing, exhilarating, invigorating, and printed it on signs, glass bottles, and paper fans. In an era when few people could afford luxuries, this drink promised a small taste of sophistication, but the real genius lay in how Coca-Cola positioned itself not as indulgence, but as virtue. America in the late 1800s was a nation obsessed with morality. The temperance movement, a social crusade against alcohol, was sweeping through towns and churches. Women led rallies, pastors preached abstinence, and slogans like, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch mine," appeared on banners. Drinking was seen as a moral weakness, a gateway to ruin. Coca-Cola arrived at exactly the right moment. It was non-alcoholic, energizing, and socially acceptable. It gave people the same lift that whiskey or beer once did, but without guilt, sin, or shame. You could sip it in public, even in front of your pastor, and no one would raise an eyebrow. Pharmacists began advertising Coca-Cola as a temperance drink, a healthful alternative for the weary and the faithful. One ad proclaimed, "Drink Coca-Cola. It builds the body and brightens the mind." Another promised a tonic for ladies and gentlemen alike, refreshing without intoxication. It was marketed not only as medicine, but as moral medicine. That framing was revolutionary. Because Coca-Cola did not compete with other medicines, it competed with alcohol. And that made it a product both righteous and profitable. Soon, soda fountains began appearing in towns across the South. They were bright, marble-lined counters with brass taps and mirrored backdrops. Young men in paper hats known as soda jerks became local celebrities. They mixed drinks with flair, adding cherries or mint leaves, making each pour a tiny performance. A visit to the soda fountain was not just about taste. It was about belonging. Parents took their children there on Sundays. Friends met there after church. Couples whispered quietly over shared glasses. In an age before movie theaters or radio, the soda fountain was where small-town America gathered to taste modernity. Coca-Cola fit that scene perfectly. It was safe enough for mothers, exciting enough for youth, and respectable enough for preachers. Its sweetness softened its chemistry, and its bubbles disguised its potency. It felt new, but innocent, a miracle wrapped in sugar and sparkle. Behind the scenes, the drink was spreading fast. Local pharmacies began buying syrup directly from Pemberton's associates, mixing it with soda water and selling it under the same name. They used the same script, the same language, the same promise. Coca-Cola was no longer just a recipe. It was becoming a brand. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some critics warned that too much stimulation could agitate the nerves or disturb the moral calm. A few physicians expressed quiet concern about the coca extract, though most dismissed it as harmless. But for every skeptic, there were hundreds of fans. The drink's reputation for clarity, comfort, and courage spread faster than caution ever could. Meanwhile, the temperance activists, many of them women, who had lost family members to alcoholism, embraced Coca-Cola as proof that modern science could replace sin with health. Some even served it at their rallies, calling it a drink for the pure of heart. The irony, of course, was hidden in the chemistry. While they toasted sobriety, each glass still contained a small trace of cocaine. But no one wanted to ask too many questions about a miracle that worked. Advertising grew bolder. Newspapers carried testimonials from happy customers who claimed Coca-Cola had cured fatigue, lifted depression, and sharpened their minds. The company even hinted that it could restore the brain and rebuild the body, a phrase that sounded almost divine. People believed it because they wanted to. In an uncertain world, belief itself was a kind of medicine. There is a lesson in that one that still echoes today. When a product fits perfectly into the fears and hopes of its time, it becomes unstoppable. Coca-Cola did not just quench thirst, it quenched doubt. It gave people permission to feel good without shame and without consequence. Or so they thought. By the early 1890s, Coca-Cola was everywhere. It had moved from Atlanta to small towns across Georgia, Alabama, and beyond. Soda fountains painted its logo on their awnings. Posters appeared in train stations and hotel lobbies. Even ministers were known to sip it between sermons. But success came with a shadow. The more people drank it, the more they wanted it. It was not just the taste, it was the feeling. That spark of energy, that brief lift of mood, that sense of being awake in a sleepy world. Coca-Cola had become not just a product, but a ritual. And rituals, once formed, rarely fade. What began as a medical tonic was now turning into a social phenomenon. And like every phenomenon, it would soon face scrutiny. Questions about its ingredients, its safety, and its true effects were coming. But for now, America did not care. The nation had found a new kind of comfort, one that fizzed in a glass and whispered promises of purity, progress, and pleasure. It is strange to think about, is not it, how something created to heal a single man's pain became the drink of millions. How a war veteran's desperate experiment turned into a moral symbol, then into a global obsession. But that is the power of timing. When culture and chemistry meet at the right moment, history changes flavor forever. And in 1886, Atlanta, it tasted like caramel, spice, and bubbles. It tasted like Coca-Cola. By the dawn of the 1890s, Coca-Cola had escaped the walls of Jacob's Pharmacy and begun its slow march into legend. It had gone from a local curiosity to a regional sensation, but success brought attention, and attention brought questions. What exactly was in this mysterious nerve tonic that made people feel so alert, so happy, and so loyal? The truth, of course, was chemistry. And chemistry, as the century turned, was starting to lose its innocence. America was beginning to wake up from the wild dream of unregulated medicine. The same era that birthed miraculous cures was now discovering their hidden costs. Doctors, journalists, and reformers started asking uncomfortable questions about what people were really consuming. Why did some patients grow restless and sleepless after their tonics? Why did restorative drinks sometimes leave the heart pounding? And why did people crave another glass so soon after finishing the first? Coca-Cola, still in its infancy, was caught in the middle of that reckoning. When Asa Candler, a sharp-minded businessman from Atlanta, purchased the rights to Coca-Cola in the late 1880s, he saw opportunity where others saw chaos. Candler was not a chemist. He was a marketer, a visionary, who understood that emotion could sell faster than ingredients. He bought out Pemberton's shares after the inventor's death, refined the formula, and began a new chapter in the drink's history, one of mass production and tight secrecy. Candler wanted Coca-Cola to be more than a medicine. He wanted it to be a lifestyle. So he gradually stripped away the medicinal image, the talk of tonics and nerve restorers, and began calling it a refreshing beverage. The word health was replaced by happiness. The laboratory became a kitchen. The prescription became pleasure. But behind the rebranding, the formula itself was changing. The first and most controversial step was reducing the cocaine content. By the late 1890s, growing scientific awareness had turned public sentiment against cocaine. Newspapers reported its dangers, describing cocaine fiends in sensational language. Addiction, paranoia, and social unrest were now being linked to the drug. Even though Coca-Cola contained only trace amounts, the association became a problem for its image. Candler quietly ordered his chemists to modify the syrup. Instead of using fresh coca leaves, they began using spent leaves, leaves that had already had most of their cocaine chemically extracted. These decocainized leaves still carried the plant's aroma and flavor, but almost none of its narcotic effect. This subtle shift kept the drink legal, safe, and morally defensible without sacrificing its trademark taste. By 1903, Coca-Cola officially removed all active cocaine from its formula. The company stopped promoting it as medicine altogether and focused on its identity as a wholesome soda. The timing was perfect. In 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act was passed, marking America's first major step toward regulating consumer products. Coca-Cola survived that wave of reform, not because it was lucky, but because it had evolved just in time. Still, the formula's transformation was not only about legality, it was also about taste and consistency. As Coca-Cola expanded, syrup production had to be standardized. Batches once mixed by hand in Pemberton's small lab were now being produced in factories and shipped to soda fountains across multiple states. Even small changes in water quality, temperature, or ingredients could alter the flavor. To fix that, Candler enforced exact measurements and strict secrecy. He locked the written recipe in a vault and limited access to just a handful of trusted employees. The mystery became part of the brand. People did not just love Coca-Cola because it tasted good. They loved it because it felt exclusive, magical, and unknowable. And the company played into that perfectly. They began to refer to the formula simply as Merchandise 7X, a cryptic name that hinted at a secret blend of oils and spices no competitor could duplicate. That mystique was powerful. It made Coca-Cola feel less like a product and more like a legend. Even today, more than a century later, the idea of the secret formula continues to fascinate people, even though, realistically, dozens of chemists have analyzed and replicated its contents. What can't be replicated, though, is its story. The early 1900s brought even more refinement. The syrup was sweetened with cane sugar rather than the variable molasses blends of the past. The balance between acidity and carbonation was adjusted for smoother texture. Candler's team discovered that consistent carbonation levels created a predictable sensation, that soft bite on the tongue people began to associate with the real Coke experience. As the world industrialized, the company also began working with specialized processors to obtain coca leaves legally. By the 1920s, the Stepan Company in New Jersey became the sole American importer licensed by the federal government to process coca leaves, removing the cocaine alkaloid before sending the flavor extract to Coca-Cola factories. That system, still active today, remains one of the strangest partnerships in American industry, a legal, regulated bridge between the coca plant and the world's most famous soft drink. At the same time, the cola nut, the drink's other namesake, continued to provide caffeine, the stimulant that gave the beverage its buzz after the cocaine was gone. Consumers still got their lift, But now it came from a gentler source one society had fully embraced. Candler also focused on presentation. He introduced the famous contour bottle, designed so people could recognize it even in the dark, or by touch alone. He understood that a product could survive ingredient changes if it had a shape, a story, and a promise that never wavered. The drink might have lost its narcotic spark, but it had gained something far more powerful: identity. By the 1910s, Coca-Cola was no longer just a Southern novelty. It had become a national symbol, one that represented modernity, optimism, and trust. It was now safe for children, respectable for women, and fashionable for men. It was the drink of workers, students, and soldiers alike. Its ingredients had changed, but its effect on culture had not. It still delivered energy, sweetness, and comfort, the very emotions people had craved since Pemberton's day. And that is the secret to its survival. Coca-Cola removed the danger, but preserved the feeling. In the decades that followed, other soda makers tried to imitate its success. Some added new flavors. Others copied its marketing. But none could match the alchemy that Coca-Cola had perfected, the balance between pleasure and purity, excitement and safety, rebellion and respectability. By transforming its formula, Coca-Cola had done something even more extraordinary. It had turned a potentially scandalous medicine into the most trusted drink on earth. And in that transformation lies a lesson deeper than chemistry. Adaptation is not about abandoning your origins. It is about understanding what truly matters, the experience, the emotion, the connection, and letting go of everything else. Coca-Cola did just that. It shed the danger but kept the dream. It traded the pharmacological for the psychological, swapping narcotic stimulation for emotional comfort, and in doing so, it did not just change its formula, it changed history. Success, as history often shows, never comes without a shadow, and the shadow of Coca-Cola was sweet, addictive, and silent. By the early 1900s, the drink had already become a symbol of comfort and progress. Factories produced thousands of bottles every day. Newspapers called it America's national beverage. Children carried glass bottles on their way to school. Workers drank it during breaks, and soldiers wrote letters home asking for a taste of it overseas. It seemed harmless. Just bubbles, sugar, and joy in a glass. But beneath that cheerful image, something darker was brewing. The first problem was not chemical, it was cultural. Coca-Cola had begun as a medicine, a tool of healing. Now it had transformed into a daily habit, a small pleasure repeated again and again until it became invisible. People did not think about what was inside their glass anymore. They did not question the formula, the sugar, or the caffeine. They only knew that it made them feel good, and that was enough. But comfort can be deceptive. Each glass of Coca-Cola carried nearly 9 teaspoons of sugar, a sweetness that masked the acidity underneath. It made the drink irresistible. The more you drank, the more you craved. Doctors of the era began noticing a new kind of problem in their patients: fatigue, headaches, irritability, and constant thirst. They called it nervous exhaustion. Today, we might call it caffeine dependence and sugar fatigue. Dentists, too, began to sound alarms. The combination of sugar and acid slowly eroded enamel, leaving teeth soft and yellowed. Children as young as 10 were losing molars. But Coca-Cola's advertising was so powerful that few wanted to believe the warnings. The smiling faces in the ads looked too happy to question. Then came the second shadow, the stimulant. Even after removing cocaine, Coca-Cola still contained caffeine, extracted from cola nuts and later from coffee beans. A glass or two gave a gentle lift, but several bottles a day brought insomnia, racing thoughts, and trembling hands. Medical journals began publishing small studies warning that excessive cola consumption could excite the heart and disrupt the nerves. But such articles were whispers in a hurricane of praise. Coca-Cola had become a global symbol of vitality, youth, and optimism. It was the drink of soldiers in World War I, athletes, factory workers, and housewives alike. Its reach was immense, and its image, wholesome and patriotic, seemed untouchable. Still, not everyone was charmed. In 1909, a crusading government official named Harvey Washington Wiley, chief chemist at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, accused Coca-Cola of selling a deleterious beverage. He claimed it contained too much caffeine and no nutritional value. He even suggested that children were becoming addicted. This led to a famous court case known as the United States 5, 40 barrels and 20 kegs of Coca-Cola. The government argued that Coca-Cola was misleading consumers by advertising refreshment while secretly hooking them on caffeine. Coca-Cola's lawyers countered that caffeine was a harmless stimulant found naturally in tea and coffee, and that the drink's popularity proved its safety. The trial ended in a partial victory for Coca-Cola. The court found no criminal wrongdoing, but the brand's image had been shaken. For the first time, the company had to defend not just what it sold, but what it symbolized. And yet, even this scandal did little to slow it down. In the public mind, Coca-Cola was not a chemical, it was a feeling. The drink had become too deeply woven into daily life to unravel. If anything, controversy made it stronger. The very idea that something so simple could stir such emotion made it seem even more powerful. But beyond legal battles, the true cost was playing out quietly in kitchens and hospitals. Sugar consumption across America skyrocketed. From 1880 to 1920, the average person's yearly sugar intake nearly tripled. Coca-Cola was not the only reason, but it was the most visible one. For many, it became the first and most constant source of sweetness in their lives. Every sip offered a tiny rush of pleasure, followed by the body's inevitable crash. And so, another glass, and another. This pattern of consumption, the rise, the fall, the craving for more, was not unique to Coca-Cola. It was part of a larger cultural addiction, the addiction to comfort. The modern world was accelerating, demanding more energy, more productivity, more smiles, and Coca-Cola fit that rhythm perfectly. It was quick, accessible, and legal. It required no prescription, no explanation, no guilt. But as decades passed, doctors began linking sugar-heavy diets to heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. Public health campaigns warned that what once seemed like a treat had become a slow poison. Coca-Cola adjusted its messaging, introducing smaller bottles, then diet versions, then zero-sugar alternatives. But by then, the habit had already spread across generations. There was also a more subtle consequence, the psychological one. For millions, Coca-Cola became a ritual of emotion. It was what you drank when you were happy, tired, lonely, or celebrating. It was liquid nostalgia, a sip of reassurance in a changing world. People did not just drink it, they identified with it. And that emotional bond made it almost untouchable. When advertising replaced medicine, belief replaced knowledge, people no longer cared whether Coca-Cola was healthy or harmful. What mattered was how it felt. And that, perhaps, was the company's greatest triumph, and humanity's quietest mistake. Because when pleasure becomes identity, it is hard to let go, even when it hurts. And Coca-Cola, more than any other invention of its age, proved just how far people would go to protect what comforts them. By the mid-20th century, the drink's darker truths were drowned beneath waves of red and white branding. Commercials showed laughing families, Christmas lights, and the famous slogan, "The pause that refreshes." It was brilliant. It reframed consumption not as indulgence, but as self-care. A break from stress, a moment of joy, a pause between work and worry. No one wanted to spoil that illusion by counting teaspoons of sugar. Yet behind those smiling faces, health experts saw an emerging pattern. The same drink that once symbolized purity and progress was now quietly linked to the rise of metabolic disease. But Coca-Cola had already transcended guilt. It was no longer a product, it was culture itself. And that is what makes this story haunting. Because the side effects of Coca-Cola were never just physical, they were societal. They shaped habits, reshaped industries, and changed how the world thought about pleasure. We learned to consume not because we were thirsty, but because we were taught to crave. Coca-Cola did not invent addiction, it refined it. It transformed the ancient human desire for energy and happiness into a brand experience. And once that transformation was complete, there was no going back. So while John Pemberton had searched for a cure to his own pain, the world found something else entirely. A drink that numbed a different kind of hunger. The hunger for comfort in an uncertain age. A sip of calm. A taste of joy. A moment of control in a world that rarely offers any. But every comfort carries a cost. And sometimes the sweetest medicine leaves the longest scar. Imagine walking into a bustling pharmacy in Atlanta, circa 1888. The sunlight filters through dusty windows, illuminating shelves crowded with glass jars, colorful labels, and tiny vials of mysterious powders. The air is thick, with scents, peppermint, menthol, tar, and a faint aroma of cocoa leaves. It is lively, chaotic, and full of anticipation. At the center of it all stands Tommy Whitaker, a teenage soda jerk with a crooked paper hat and a mischievous smile. To the untrained eye, he is just a boy behind a counter, mixing sodas for customers. But to anyone paying attention, he is the unofficial heartbeat of the pharmacy. With a practiced flair, Tommy pours syrup, adds a splash of carbonated water, and slides each glass across the marble countertop with precision and showmanship. Every stir, every tap, every fizz is part of a carefully orchestrated performance. Tommy knows his customers intimately. He remembers which flavor Mrs. Langley prefers on Tuesdays, the exact amount of fizz Mr. Carter likes in his nerve tonic, and which children dare to try double cherry syrup. He is more than a soda jerk. He is part therapist, part entertainer, and part community oracle. People come not just for the drink, but for Tommy's presence. He offers advice, listens to gossip, and occasionally dispenses small doses of laughter, along with Coca-Cola. One particularly hot afternoon, a traveling salesman bursts into the pharmacy, desperate for relief from the sweltering Georgia sun. Tommy grins, recognizing a chance to impress. He grabs a glass, measures syrup with flair, fizzes it with the lever, and slides it across to the man. The drink sparkles, cold and inviting. The salesman takes a sip, and his eyes widen with delight. Word spreads quickly. Soon, people are coming from neighboring streets, drawn by rumors of the young boy who could make every glass taste like an adventure. The pharmacy begins to feel like a stage. Every customer interaction is a mini performance. Every pour a calculated act of chemistry and showmanship. Tommy's popularity grows. Adults and children alike start treating him as a local celebrity. He does not need newspapers or billboards. His fame spreads by word of mouth, carried on the fizz of each glass he serves. Parents, fascinated by his skill, encourage their children to behave at the soda fountain, promising a chance to watch Tommy at work. Workers linger after their shifts, eager for the brief respite that his drinks and conversation provide. Even the pharmacist, a stern man with a mutton-chop beard, allows Tommy creative freedom because he understands that the boy is more than capable. He is the pharmacy's secret weapon. But fame comes with challenges. Tommy quickly learns the hard lessons of responsibility. The drinks are powerful. A miscalculation could overstimulate a nervous customer or cause a minor mishap. One summer day, he accidentally pours double the syrup into a batch of Coca-Cola for an entire table. The results are immediate: jittery hands, buzzing voices, and a minor uproar among patrons. Instead of scolding him, the pharmacist uses it as a teaching moment. Tommy notes every detail, adjusts the recipe, and learns to respect the power hidden in each glass. By the end of the week, Tommy's reputation has solidified. He is known not only for his skill, but for his reliability and creativity. People come to the pharmacy hoping to see him work, even if they do not buy a single drink. In a time before social media or television, a soda jerk becomes a local legend, celebrated for the smallest of gestures: a perfectly frothed glass, a witty comment, a smile. But Tommy's story also highlights something deeper about the era. In the late 19th century, pharmacists were not just professionals, they were social hubs. The soda fountain was a place of community, connection, and experimentation. The young boy behind the counter, serving fizzy beverages, could influence moods, spark conversations, and even impact productivity in ways that today seem extraordinary. Coca-Cola and other tonics were not just drinks. They were catalysts for social interaction. The significance of Tommy's role cannot be understated. He embodies the human desire for small joys and the power of ritual in everyday life. A simple act, pouring a drink, becomes an art, a shared experience that builds memories and bonds communities. As Tommy's fame grows, he begins to experiment. He tweaks recipes, mixes new flavors, and even invents his own combinations of syrups, sometimes adding hints of vanilla or cherry to surprise customers. People line up just to try his latest creation. Parents reward good behavior with a sip of Tommy's special blend. Local children whisper about the magical touch he brings to each glass. In essence, he is shaping tastes and traditions without ever needing a formal title. His story also demonstrates the blurred line between business and showmanship in early Coca-Cola culture. The drink was powerful, but its success was magnified by personalities like Tommy. Behind every thriving soda fountain was someone who understood performance, timing, and attention to detail. The beverage itself could provide energy, but the experience, the ritual, the interaction, the spectacle was equally potent. By the 1890s, stories of the Miracle Boy of Atlanta are told in neighboring towns. Travelers seek out Jacob's Pharmacy, hoping to witness Tommy in action. The combination of caffeine, sugar, and social charm is intoxicating. People leave feeling energized, entertained, and connected, often sharing the tale with friends and family. The soda jerk, once a minor role in a local pharmacy, becomes a micro-celebrity, a symbol of creativity, community, and the unassuming power of everyday brilliance. And through it all, Tommy continues to learn and adapt. He observes customer reactions, notes minor side effects, and considers the broader impact of each concoction. This is an era before strict regulation or labeling, yet responsibility exists in practice. Passed from the pharmacist to the apprentice, from one soda jerk to the next, Tommy Whitaker's story, while singular, reflects a larger truth about early Coca-Cola culture. The beverage was more than sugar, caffeine, or medicine. It was an experience, shaped by human hands, personalities, and interactions. The soda fountain was not just a place to drink. It was a stage for connection, learning, and experimentation. Every pour was a chance to innovate, every sip a moment of shared joy. And perhaps that is why Coca-Cola became more than a drink. It was culture, ritual, and social glue. The soda jerk, seemingly a minor role, was actually central to this story, an unsung hero shaping the way people engaged with one of the world's most enduring brands. Through Tommy, we see that history is not just shaped by founders, chemists, or advertisements. It is shaped by the small human acts that give life to ideas. A teenage boy with a paper hat and a mischievous grin behind a marble counter helped to define what it meant to experience Coca-Cola, a mix of energy, excitement, and community that persists in spirit to this day. Picture Atlanta in the late 1880s. The streets are bustling with horse-drawn carriages, shopkeepers hawking goods, and pedestrians dodging stray dogs. The air is thick with dust, the scent of coal smoke, and the faint aroma of freshly baked bread. But beneath the clatter of daily life, a social movement is gathering steam, the temperance movement. Groups of reformers, mostly women's auxiliaries, ministers, and moral crusaders, march through town squares, handing out pamphlets and delivering speeches on the evils of alcohol. Whiskey is condemned. Beer is scorned. Even wine, traditionally enjoyed in moderation, is under suspicion. For these reformers, sobriety is not just a lifestyle choice, it is a moral imperative. They believe that the nation's problems, from poverty to domestic strife, stem from the corrosive effects of alcohol. Enter Coca-Cola, a fizzy beverage marketed as a healthful tonic, loaded with sugar, caffeine, and at the time a tiny dose of cocaine. It is harmless in the eyes of reformers because it is not alcohol. The drink becomes the loophole everyone's been waiting for, a legal, socially acceptable stimulant. Workers, housewives, students, and even preachers can sip it openly without fear of moral condemnation. In a society where the temperance movement dictates public behavior, Coca-Cola cleverly positions itself as the responsible alternative. The soda fountain becomes a gathering place for people seeking relief from exhaustion, nerves, or boredom. The pharmacist, half scientist, half showman, mixes drinks with precision and flair. Every pour is an act of theater, every glass a subtle promise. You can enjoy this and remain respectable. Families embrace Coca-Cola as a safe buzz. Parents feel comfortable giving it to children in moderation, enjoying the subtle energy it provides without the stigma of alcohol. Even church gatherings are transformed. Instead of lemonade, soda fountains with Coca-Cola take center stage, providing refreshment, excitement, and a socially acceptable thrill. Children giggle over double syrups. Adults engage in lively conversation, and the elderly find a renewed spark in the afternoon heat. This era also introduces an unexpected social consequence. By creating a non-alcoholic stimulant, Coca-Cola subtly reshapes daily life. Workers are more alert, during long shifts. Clerks can endure tedious hours at the counting table. Students stay awake during evening studies. The beverage's effects are noticeable, but socially sanctioned. It does not just offer energy. It offers a sense of permission. People can enjoy stimulation without fear of public scrutiny, a legal rebellion disguised as civility. Marketing genius amplifies this effect. Advertisements proudly promote Coca-Cola as a healthful, invigorating drink, perfect for the family, the office, or the classroom. It is not just about sugar and caffeine. It is about positioning. Coca-Cola is framed as the beverage of the modern, respectable American, a bridge between indulgence and propriety. This branding strategy is subtle but powerful, creating an early example of lifestyle marketing before the concept even existed. The soda fountain itself becomes a stage for social ritual. Patrons form habits around their favorite drinks, swapping stories, observing others' orders, and feeling part of a shared experience. Children trade tips on the best syrup combinations. Adults discuss local news and gossip. The act of drinking Coca-Cola is no longer purely functional. It is cultural, communal, and performative. The beverage facilitates connection, providing energy, social comfort, and a subtle sense of identity. The temperance loophole also drives rapid adoption. People previously reliant on coffee, tea, or small doses of alcohol discover Coca-Cola's appeal. It offers stimulation, sweetness, and novelty, all without violating moral or social norms. Even preachers, typically the staunchest critics of indulgence, are known to sip the drink in private or recommend it as a nervous tonic to their parishioners. Coca-Cola thrives precisely because it navigates societal constraints while fulfilling human desires. Of course, this period is not without tension. Rumors begin to circulate about the drink's potency, largely due to its small cocaine content. A few skeptical physicians caution about overstimulation, but the general public is captivated. The beverage is still affordable, widely available, and delightfully fizzy. Consumers are drawn not only to its taste, but to its promise of productivity and mild euphoria. Coca-Cola becomes an emblem of controlled indulgence, a product that delivers excitement without moral compromise. The temperance movement inadvertently accelerates Coca-Cola's success. By discouraging alcohol, reformers push society toward alternative stimulants. Coca-Cola fills the void, positioning itself as the socially acceptable way to experience energy and enjoyment. It is a rare example in history where a movement meant to curb vice directly enables a commercial phenomenon. The beverage becomes both a cultural artifact and a clever solution to social pressures. Tommy Whitaker, the soda jerk from the previous segment, exemplifies how this dynamic plays out at the local level. He is not just serving drinks. He is navigating the expectations of a society in flux. Every pour of Coca-Cola is a negotiation between pleasure and propriety. By understanding his community, Tommy ensures that patrons enjoy the buzz without scandal. This creates trust, loyalty, and a subtle yet powerful form of social engineering. By the end of the 1880s, Coca-Cola has transformed from a pharmacy curiosity into a cultural mainstay. Its success is a blend of chemistry, charisma, and circumstance. The temperance movement, intended to reduce vice, unintentionally fuels the growth of a new stimulant culture. Coca-Cola demonstrates that products succeed not only because of their composition, but because of the social context into which they are released. This story illustrates broader lessons about human behavior. People seek stimulation, enjoyment, and social connection, even under strict moral codes. Innovation often arises at the intersection of necessity and constraint, and marketing that aligns with societal norms while satisfying human desires is a powerful force. In short, Coca-Cola's early adoption was not simply about taste or invention. It was about understanding society and offering a safe way to experience energy, excitement, and community. Through its fizz, sweetness, and clever positioning, it created a shared cultural experience that continues to resonate over a century later. By the late 1880s, Coca-Cola's popularity had grown beyond the marble counters of Atlanta's pharmacies. People no longer wanted to visit the soda fountain every day. They wanted the same sweet, fizzy, mildly stimulating beverage at home, at picnics, and on the move. Demand outpaced the capabilities of the local soda jerks, no matter how skilled or energetic they were. This created the need for bottling a leap from handcrafted sodas to a system that could deliver the magic anywhere. Imagine the first bottling attempts: a dusty warehouse, barrels stacked to the ceiling, and a handful of workers armed with corks, buckets, and endless optimism. Glass bottles were expensive, fragile, and unpredictable. Sometimes the corks would pop unexpectedly, sending syrup flying and occasionally drenching a worker in sticky caramel-colored liquid. Other times, bottles would leak or explode during transit, coating wagon wheels and the cobblestones with sweet disaster. Every shipment was a gamble, but the gamble paid off. Consumers were willing to take the risk because the reward was a glass of Coca-Cola anywhere they wanted. The syrup itself was a mystery to most. Pharmacists carefully mixed the secret formula in small batches, sometimes tasting it for quality control and sometimes just for science, or perhaps curiosity. Carbonated water was added during bottling, but the fizz could vary. Some bottles were perfectly carbonated, others slightly flat. Yet each glass carried the promise of excitement, refreshment, and that signature gentle buzz. Distribution expanded rapidly. Bottled Coca-Cola traveled by wagon, train, and steamboat, reaching towns that did not even have proper streetlights yet. Small towns competed to be among the first to carry the coveted drink, and local soda jerks proudly practiced their pouring technique to mimic the fountain experience. The brand identity became instantly recognizable. The curvy, red script logo marked bottles as a symbol of modernity, progress, and indulgence, all for just a nickel. The social impact was immediate. Families could stock up for summer afternoons. Children traded empty bottles like baseball cards, and adults carried bottles to work for a discreet energy boost. Even church picnics began featuring Coca-Cola, subtly replacing lemonade or other traditional beverages. The act of drinking Coca-Cola moved from a local pharmacy ritual to a shared social experience accessible anywhere, broadening its influence exponentially. Behind the scenes, bottling was chaotic but inventive. Employees experimented with the amount of syrup, carbonation, and cork tension. Occasionally, taste testing was conducted, sometimes scientifically, often impulsively. Yet these trials and errors contributed to a culture of creative problem-solving and small-scale innovation, setting the stage for a nationwide beverage industry. The move to bottled Coca-Cola also reinforced the brand's image as a family-friendly, temperance-aligned drink. By eliminating the need to visit the pharmacy, the beverage could be consumed discreetly at home or socially, with all the social legitimacy of a healthful tonic. Parents could provide it to children. Workers could enjoy it on breaks. Students could carry it to study sessions. Coca-Cola became a subtle tool for social conformity, allowing people to experience stimulation without violating moral or cultural expectations. Interestingly, bottling created new marketing opportunities. Coca-Cola posters appeared in train stations, general stores, and even roadside barns, spreading awareness beyond the local community. Word of mouth complemented these efforts. Traveling salesmen brought bottles to small towns, distributing free samples and spreading tales of invigorated factory workers and alert students. The drink became more than just a product. It was a social phenomenon, a shared secret, and a symbol of accessible modernity. Competition also emerged. Other beverages tried to emulate Coca-Cola's success, experimenting with cola nuts, syrups, and carbonation. Some rival sodas, like Pepsi, then known as Brad's Drink, began as digestive aids and gradually entered the cola market. Many failed spectacularly, producing flavors that were too bitter, flat, or overly complicated. Coca-Cola's early dominance was secured not just by taste, but by brand recognition, trust, and clever marketing, aided by the temperance-friendly positioning. The bottling process, despite its imperfections, democratized access. Urban and rural consumers alike could enjoy the same drink. Social rituals adapted. Picnics, train journeys, and informal gatherings now featured Coca-Cola, further embedding it into daily life. The beverage also became a conversation starter, a way to connect with neighbors, colleagues, and friends, reinforcing its cultural significance. On a broader scale, bottling illustrated a key principle of business innovation. Scaling a product requires solving logistical and social challenges simultaneously. Coca-Cola succeeded because it was not just delicious, it was convenient, socially accepted, and culturally integrated. The transition from pharmacy counters to bottles showed foresight and adaptability, qualities that continue to define the brand over a century later. The bottling revolution transformed Coca-Cola from a local pharmacy curiosity into a national icon. It created new jobs, fostered distribution networks, and set the standard for future beverage companies. More importantly, it allowed Americans to experience energy, refreshment, and mild stimulation in a socially sanctioned way, bypassing the moral scrutiny of the temperance era. This story also highlights a timeless lesson. Innovation thrives at the intersection of need, social context, and human desire. Coca-Cola's creators did not just invent a drink. They recognized societal constraints, leveraged opportunity, and created a product that resonated culturally and emotionally. By understanding people's desires for energy, enjoyment, and social connection, the brand achieved enduring success. As you imagine holding that first glass of bottled Coca-Cola in your hand, consider the chaos behind its creation: exploding bottles, experimental formulas, overworked bottlers, and a society in flux. Each bottle represents more than sugar and caffeine. It is a testament to entrepreneurship, social ingenuity, and the unpredictable ways in which culture and commerce intersect. Through these early bottling efforts, Coca-Cola began its journey from a local tonic to a global beverage phenomenon, shaping American life and consumer culture for generations. By the 1890s, Coca-Cola had become more than just a drink. It was the centerpiece of a vibrant social culture. Soda fountains were no longer merely dispensing health tonics. They had become community hubs, places where people gathered to relax, gossip, and escape the routine of daily life. Stepping into a pharmacy with a soda fountain was akin to entering a theater, where every sip carried the promise of refreshment and mild exhilaration. Picture a typical afternoon in an Atlanta pharmacy. The marble counters gleamed under dim gaslight, brass taps hissed as carbonated water met syrup, and glass bottles lined the walls like a chemist's trophy collection. Soda jerks, often young men barely out of their teens, worked with the precision of trained performers, adding syrup, stirring with flourish, and sliding drinks across the counter in a choreographed dance. Every interaction was both practical and performative. A glass of Coca-Cola was not just a beverage. It was a ritual. The patrons themselves were a mix of society's everyman and aspiring elite. Factory workers on break, mothers escaping chores for a brief respite, schoolchildren with sticky fingers, and traveling salesmen seeking relief from the sweltering heat all lined up for their glass. Conversation bubbled as lively as the soda in their glasses, drifting from local gossip to the latest inventions or political rumors. At these fountains, a community was born, one bound by taste, caffeine, sugar, and a shared enjoyment of subtle stimulation. Soda fountains offered something unique, social equality under the guise of refreshment. Regardless of wealth, age, or occupation, anyone could enjoy a glass of Coca-Cola. The nickel price made it accessible, while the euphoric effects, though mild, gave a temporary sense of elevation. For a brief moment, hierarchy mattered less. Everyone was simply a participant in a collective experience, sipping the same sweet, fizzy beverage and feeling a shared connection. The rituals surrounding the soda fountain were deliberate and meaningful. Ordering a drink required understanding the etiquette, how to ask politely, which flavors to choose, and whether to linger or move along. Some patrons returned daily, developing routines that became woven into the fabric of their lives. Soda fountains were a public theater of consumption, where small gestures stirring, pouring, selecting flavors communicated social knowledge and belonging. Children in particular found magic in these fountains. The gleaming glassware, colorful syrups, and playful garnishes created a sense of childhood wonder. They traded tips on which flavors to mix, challenged each other to taste the strongest syrup, and compared strategies for getting extra fizz. For them, the soda fountain was a playground. For adults, it was a combination of relief, socialization, and mild euphoria. Even in more formal circles, soda fountains carved out a niche. Churchgoers found a socially acceptable alternative to alcohol, while temperance advocates could enjoy a legal stimulant. Family outings featured shared glasses, and casual conversations became infused with laughter and energy. The fountain blurred the line between utility and entertainment, medicine and indulgence. Behind the scenes, pharmacists embraced their dual role as health advisors and entertainers. They dispensed not only drinks, but also life advice, gossip, and occasional remedies for ailments both real and imagined. A skilled pharmacist could tailor the experience, adding just enough syrup for effect, balancing carbonation, and observing patrons' reactions. In essence, they curated both the beverage and the social moment, making each visit unique and memorable. This culture fostered innovation as well. Competing flavors, seasonal specials, and improvised syrup combinations became experiments in taste, presentation, and engagement. The soda fountain evolved into a laboratory of consumer behavior, where feedback was immediate and creativity thrived. Every satisfied sip reinforced the social dynamics, and every misstep offered lessons for refinement. Beyond the drink itself, soda fountains contributed to public health indirectly. In an era when water quality was unreliable and alcohol consumption was morally scrutinized, a fizzy, sweet beverage offered hydration, stimulation, and social legitimacy all at once. It satisfied both physical and psychological needs, functioning as a legal, culturally sanctioned outlet for energy and pleasure. Coca-Cola's presence at soda fountains also cemented brand loyalty early. By associating the beverage with positive social experiences, the company ensured that taste alone was not the primary driver. Memory, ritual, and emotional context amplified attachment. A customer's first sip at a pharmacy became a shared story, passed along through families, friends, and community gossip. The rise of soda fountain culture demonstrates a key principle in business and society. Products become powerful when they intersect with daily life and social ritual. Coca-Cola succeeded, not solely because of its formula, but because it created shared experiences, structured social norms, and emotional resonance. The fountain was the stage, the soda jerk was the performer, and the patrons were participants in a ritual that united taste, community, and mild exhilaration. For modern audiences, these early soda fountains offer a glimpse into the origins of consumer culture, branding, and social engagement. They highlight how human desires for pleasure, social connection, and ritual can amplify a product's success. From a small Atlanta pharmacy to cities across the South, Coca-Cola transformed not just how people drank, but how they interacted, celebrated, and experienced everyday life. In essence, the soda fountain was more than a place to quench thirst. It was a microcosm of society, a place of innovation, social leveling, and mild chemical adventure. Every glass carried the promise of refreshment, community, and a little spark of magic. By participating in this culture, Americans were not just consuming a drink. They were experiencing a social phenomenon that would shape habits, expectations, and consumer culture for generations. And so, the next time you pour yourself a soda, imagine the bustling pharmacy of 1890s Atlanta. Hear the hiss of carbonated water, feel the anticipation of the first sip, and appreciate the carefully choreographed dance between soda jerk, syrup, and patron. It was here, in these lively, unpredictable spaces, that Coca-Cola became not just a drink, but a cultural institution, one glass, one ritual, and one community at a time. By the early 20th century, Coca-Cola had become a household name, yet the landscape around it was shifting. Public concern over cocaine, once a celebrated ingredient, began to rise. Medical journals issued warnings about overstimulation, nervous exhaustion, and potential habituation. Parents, ministers, and reformers started whispering behind their handkerchiefs, could this beloved beverage carry hidden dangers? At first, the warnings were subtle, almost playful. A newspaper article here, a cautious physician's note there. But gradually, the conversation became harder to ignore. People noticed jittery hands, sleepless nights, and bursts of excessive energy. Stories circulated of factory workers reorganizing warehouses at midnight, or neighbors alphabetizing pantries with obsessive fervor. The Coca-Cola Company faced a delicate problem: how to maintain popularity while addressing public concern. The solution was twofold. First, the company carefully removed cocaine from its formula, a discreet change that avoided alarming the public. Second, they emphasized the beverage's wholesome and family-friendly qualities, rebranding it as a refreshing, invigorating drink rather than a chemical stimulant. This era also marked the rise of bottled Coca-Cola. No longer confined to pharmacy soda fountains, the drink could now travel to homes, picnics, and workplaces. Glass bottles allowed for personal consumption, convenience, and a sense of ownership over the experience. Consumers could carry the magic home, extend the ritual, and continue enjoying the social and sensory pleasures without needing a soda fountain as an intermediary. The bottling process was itself an adventure. Workers poured syrup into kettles, blended carbonated water, and carefully corked each fragile bottle. Breakages were common, spills frequent, yet each crate that made it to market felt like a triumph over chance, labor, and physics. Early bottling lines were improvisational, relying on human skill, observation, and a dash of luck. Every batch that reached a customer carried not just flavor, but a story of persistence and ingenuity. Advertising became increasingly strategic and omnipresent. Billboards, newspapers, and eventually matchbooks and clocks promoted Coca-Cola relentlessly. Catchy slogans like delicious and refreshing, and the pause that refreshes cemented brand recognition, embedding the beverage in daily routines and cultural consciousness. Marketing emphasized enjoyment, energy, and social connection, sometimes more than the actual ingredients. The public ritual of drinking Coca-Cola persisted. Soda fountains remained hubs for community interaction, but now the ritual extended into homes and workplaces. Families incorporated the drink into meals and celebrations, and children eagerly collected bottles, trading them like baseball cards. Coca-Cola had transitioned from a medicinal tonic to a symbol of shared experience and modernity. Health concerns were addressed subtly. Warnings about overstimulation were tempered with assurances of moderation. Advertising highlighted purity, refreshment, and energy without drawing attention to the now-removed cocaine. The company navigated the transition gracefully, preserving the beverage's appeal, trust, and ritual significance. Meanwhile, the beverage's flavor profile evolved. Sugar became more prominent, caffeine provided a gentler stimulant effect, and caramel coloring enhanced visual appeal. The drink now offered a consistent, predictable experience, balancing sweetness, effervescence, and mild alertness. While the euphoric highs of the 19th century faded, consumers still found pleasure in its taste and ritual consumption. Coca-Cola's cultural impact grew alongside its commercial success. Its branding reinforced American identity, optimism, and progress. From the small pharmacy in Atlanta to bustling cities across the country, the drink became a fixture in everyday life. People did not just consume a beverage, they participated in a shared social and cultural ritual, one shaped by history, innovation, and marketing genius. Even as regulations increased and the medical establishment questioned stimulant use, Coca-Cola thrived. The company's careful formula adjustments, combined with effective marketing and cultural integration, allowed it to endure and expand. From soda fountains to bottles, advertisements to family gatherings, Coca-Cola became a constant presence, symbolizing refreshment, energy, and the pleasure of shared moments. For modern audiences, this transition illustrates a key lesson. Successful products adapt without losing their essence. Coca-Cola managed to maintain popularity despite regulatory scrutiny, evolving public attitudes, and changing social norms. The beverage's survival and growth were not solely due to its taste or ingredients, but because it remained embedded in social rituals, marketing narratives, and daily life. In essence, the story of Coca-Cola's transition from a cocaine-laced tonic to a sugar and caffeine beverage demonstrates how innovation, adaptability, and cultural integration intersect. The drink survived legal changes, health concerns, and evolving consumer tastes, all while preserving the communal and ritualistic elements that made it special. Coca-Cola became not just a beverage, but an enduring cultural phenomenon, capable of bridging generations, social classes, and communities. Next time you pop open a bottle, consider the legacy behind it. Imagine the bustling soda fountains, the careful mixing, the ritual of consumption, and the delicate balance between science, social habit, and commerce. Every sip carries a history of experimentation, adaptation, and human ingenuity. Coca-Cola's story reminds us that products are more than their ingredients. They are cultural touchstones, shared experiences, and symbols of human creativity. By the early 20th century, Coca-Cola had firmly established itself as more than just a drink. It had become a cultural symbol, a beverage entwined with social rituals, identity, and modern life. Its roots lay in the local pharmacies and soda fountains of Atlanta, where the original tonic had delighted customers with its sweet taste and subtle stimulant effects. In these soda fountains, community and connection thrived. Customers lingered over conversations, shared stories, and formed bonds while sipping their drinks. Children traded empty bottles, adults debated flavors, and townsfolk returned again and again for the comfort, ritual, and shared experience that the beverage provided. Coca-Cola was not merely consumed, it facilitated a social network, a local culture of interaction and enjoyment. As bottling became widespread, Coca-Cola transcended the local soda fountain. Glass bottles allowed the drink to travel on trains, to picnics, and into homes. The experience of drinking Coca-Cola shifted from a public, communal ritual to a private, portable indulgence. People could carry the beverage anywhere, preserving the taste, fizz, and sensory delight. It became a way to extend the ritual beyond the pharmacy counter, integrating it into everyday life. Advertising and branding amplified this cultural impact. Posters, billboards, newspaper ads, and later matchbooks and clocks ensured that Coca-Cola's image was omnipresent. Catchphrases like delicious and refreshing and the pause that refreshes reinforced the beverage as an essential part of daily life. Marketing portrayed Coca-Cola not just as a drink, but as a source of joy, energy, and belonging. The company's careful attention to visual identity contributed to its global resonance. The distinctive red and white logo, elegant script, and consistent imagery created instant recognition. No matter the city, neighborhood, or country, the Coca-Cola brand conveyed the same promise, refreshment, delight, and a touch of modernity. This combination of product, design, and narrative made Coca-Cola more than a beverage. It became a symbol of culture and aspiration. Coca-Cola's integration into American life was aided by its alignment with social trends. During Prohibition, soda fountains became spaces where people could gather and enjoy non-alcoholic refreshments. The drink's association with moderation, family-friendly consumption, and respectability allowed it to thrive alongside social reform movements, positioning it as both acceptable and desirable. The drink also adapted to changing public expectations and health concerns. As cocaine was removed from the formula, caffeine and sugar became its primary stimulants, providing a gentler boost while maintaining the pleasurable ritual of consumption. Marketing emphasized balance, refreshment, and energy, ensuring that Coca-Cola remained appealing even as public attitudes toward stimulants evolved. Coca-Cola's cultural influence extended beyond American borders. Sold internationally, it became a shared global language, a product recognized for its taste, branding, and ritual significance. Sold in restaurants, hotels, and soda fountains around the world, Coca-Cola brought a sense of modernity and connection to communities far from Atlanta. The drink transcended national boundaries, connecting people through a shared experience of taste, fizz, and cultural identity. The beverage also shaped social customs and traditions. Holidays, celebrations, and daily routines increasingly featured Coca-Cola as a ritualistic element. Children eagerly anticipated soda fountain visits or bottles at picnics. Families integrated the drink into meals, social gatherings, and community events. Through these practices, Coca-Cola became embedded in the fabric of everyday life, reinforcing its cultural significance over generations. Marketing campaigns further entrenched Coca-Cola in the collective imagination. Iconic imagery, seasonal promotions, and creative storytelling elevated the beverage beyond a consumable product. Advertising portrayed the drink as a source of happiness, energy, and social connection, appealing to all ages. From Santa Claus campaigns to images of families sharing Coca-Cola at summer picnics, the company leveraged emotion, nostalgia, and social aspiration to cement its place in culture. Coca-Cola's enduring success demonstrates the power of cultural embedding in product strategy. The company's ability to adapt ingredients, branding, and messaging ensured that it remained relevant across changing social norms, regulatory environments, and consumer expectations. It survived scrutiny, evolving tastes, and competition by fostering community, ritual, and identity around its product. This legacy is visible today. Coca-Cola is consumed worldwide in homes, restaurants, sporting events, and entertainment venues. Its bottles, cans, and advertisements serve as cultural icons recognized globally. From the soda fountain to international markets, the drink has maintained a consistent promise of refreshment, pleasure, and connection. The story of Coca-Cola also highlights broader lessons about innovation, marketing, and culture. A product's success depends not just on quality, but on its integration into daily life, social norms, and shared experiences. Coca-Cola's combination of taste, ritual, branding, and adaptability created a product that was more than a beverage. It became part of human culture itself. In conclusion, Coca-Cola's journey from an experimental pharmacy tonic to a global cultural icon illustrates the intersection of creativity, social integration, and strategic branding. It reminds us that enduring influence comes from embedding products within the rituals, aspirations, and connections that define human life. Coca-Cola became a symbol of community, progress, and shared joy, proof that sometimes the most powerful inventions are those that shape culture as much as they satisfy taste. As we reflect on Coca-Cola's remarkable journey, it is clear that the drink's story is more than just about sugar, fizz, or caffeine. It is a narrative about innovation, culture, and the power of human connection. One of the first lessons Coca-Cola teaches us is the importance of adapting to societal shifts. From its beginnings as a cocaine-laced medicinal tonic to a caffeinated beverage for the masses, Coca-Cola adjusted its formula in response to public concern, regulation, and social trends. This adaptability allowed the brand to remain relevant while retaining its core identity: sweet, refreshing, and invigorating. Marketing strategy offers another enduring lesson. Coca-Cola understood early on that a product's value is inseparable from its perception. By embedding itself in visual culture, social rituals, and collective imagination, Coca-Cola transformed a beverage into a cultural symbol. Advertising campaigns were not just informative, they told stories, evoked emotions, and created shared experiences. From hand-painted posters in small towns to global holiday campaigns, Coca-Cola engineered desire through narrative and imagery, demonstrating the power of context in branding. Community played a central role in Coca-Cola's rise. The soda fountain culture in Atlanta provided a space for connection, conversation, and shared experiences. People did not just drink Coca-Cola, they participated in a social ritual, strengthening bonds with neighbors, family, and friends. This sense of belonging contributed as much to Coca-Cola's success as its taste or formula. By understanding the social dimension of consumption, the company leveraged human behavior to foster loyalty and enthusiasm. Innovation is another crucial lesson. Coca-Cola emerged from a chaotic, experimental environment where pharmacists mixed syrups, tested formulas, and improvised constantly. This culture of trial and error produced a beverage that was unique, flavorful, and irresistibly stimulating. Even the accidental combination of cocoa leaves, cola nuts, sugar, and carbonated water became an iconic recipe. reminding us that creativity often thrives in uncertainty. Coca-Cola's story also illustrates the power of ritual and repetition. Daily consumption, family gatherings, picnics, and social outings created repeated touchpoints with the product, reinforcing habit and preference. By becoming part of everyday routines, Coca-Cola cemented its place in life's fabric. The beverage transcended simple utility, evolving into an emotional and symbolic experience. The company's ability to create a global identity highlights the importance of consistency in messaging. From early Atlanta soda fountains to international markets, Coca-Cola maintained recognizable branding, packaging, and messaging. Consistency builds trust, strengthens recall, and allows consumers to associate the product with specific emotions and experiences, regardless of geography. Coca-Cola also demonstrates the balance between exclusivity and accessibility. Initially crafted behind pharmacy counters and served in local soda fountains, the drink was personal, almost secretive. As bottling scaled, the beverage became accessible to a wider audience without losing its mystique. The balance of rarity and availability created anticipation and desire, a lesson applicable to modern product launches and consumer engagement. The narrative also shows the interplay between regulation, social norms, and creativity. While Prohibition-era restrictions on alcohol created challenges, Coca-Cola positioned itself as a socially acceptable stimulant, giving people an enjoyable alternative. The brand leveraged social currents, demonstrating that understanding the broader cultural and legal context is essential for sustained success. Consumer perception and experience were central to Coca-Cola's enduring appeal. The taste, fizz, sweetness, and ritualized consumption created a multi-sensory experience. Combined with the playful, joyful imagery of advertising and the communal aspects of soda fountains, Coca-Cola became more than a beverage. It was an experience that consumers desired. This highlights the importance of engaging all senses and emotions in brand design. From a business perspective, Coca-Cola's rise underscores the value of scalability. The transition from handcrafted syrup in local pharmacies to mass-produced, globally distributed bottles required logistical innovation, supply chain development, and operational foresight. Without these practical advancements, even the most beloved product would have remained a local curiosity, rather than achieving worldwide recognition. Finally, Coca-Cola's story provides a lesson in resilience and longevity. Through formula adjustments, changing tastes, health concerns, and market competition, the company remained adaptive while preserving its core identity. It shows that enduring success comes not just from invention, but from maintaining relevance, understanding culture, and listening to consumer behavior. In conclusion, Coca-Cola's journey offers rich insights for anyone interested in marketing, innovation, and cultural influence. The beverage's path from a small Atlanta pharmacy to a global icon illustrates the intersection of creativity, social engagement, marketing, and adaptability. By examining its history, we learn that products succeed when they become part of human rituals, respond to societal change, and deliver experiences beyond their functional purpose. Whether you are crafting a product, launching a brand, or simply exploring cultural phenomena, Coca-Cola teaches us that success is a blend of taste, storytelling, and social integration. Its legacy endures not merely because it quenches thirst, but because it has become a symbol of connection, enjoyment, and possibility, a reminder that even a simple beverage can shape culture and history. As we sip the last remnants of history, it is clear that Coca-Cola is more than just a drink. It is a story of curiosity, creativity, and the human desire to feel alive, even in the simplest ways. From the bustling soda fountains of 1880s Atlanta to every glass we enjoy today. Coca-Cola reminds us that innovation often comes from curiosity, experimentation, and a little bit of audacity. We have seen how a beverage can shape social rituals, influence culture, and even challenge norms, all while delighting our senses. So the next time you pop open a bottle, take a moment to appreciate the history, the effort, and the imagination behind that fizzing glass of sweetness. It is a reminder that even small ideas, pursued passionately, can leave a legacy that lasts for generations. Thank you for joining me on this fizzy journey through history. I hope you have enjoyed learning about the fascinating world of Coca-Cola's origins, its wild experiments, and the cultural revolution it sparked. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your favorite beverage ritual. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep sipping on the stories that history pours for us. Good night, and may your dreams be as sweet and effervescent as a freshly poured glass of Coke.